The legend of Siwa. The shadow who is Bayek. Bayek, Bayek, Bayek. Bayek.
Sounds like quite a man.
6 years ago, when Assassin's Creed Origins was released, I'd like to think that Ubisoft really impressed us with that game. It took a very different step in direction and made the series feel like something completely different. And on top of the base game, a gold edition of Assassin's Creed Origins was announced, providing access to DLC. And in regards to this video, the first of the two is called the Hidden Ones DLC. And yes, I know I'm 6 years late to making this video, but I did not have a YouTube channel back in 2017. But hey, better late than never, right? The Hidden Ones DLC is one of, if not my favorite DLC out of any of the Assassin's Creed games. Perhaps the Jack the Ripper DLC, the Da Vinci Disappearance DLC, and even the Curse of the Pharaohs DLC come close or on par, but it's a tough call. In fact, my YouTube channel is called The Hidden One, purely because of the Hidden Ones DLC, so you can tell I'm a pretty big fan of it. This DLC extends the story of one of my favorite protagonists being Bayek, and the young Brotherhood with a completely new region, new enemies, new side quests, and an increased level cap. And for a relatively short expansion that's got around 7 or 8 hours of content, it definitely does such a great job of showing us how a DLC is meant to be. In fact, I like to think that this is what a sequel of Assassin's Creed Origins could have been, but the short length was all that Ubisoft allowed the developers to work on. This video will contain spoilers for the Hidden Ones DLC, so if you haven't played it and you're watching this video, then go play it. It's pretty short, and then later on you can watch this video. Anyway, without further ado, let's just get right into it. Typically, I'm not too keen on story-driven DLC that releases after a game's launch. Once I've wrapped up a game, going back to it becomes pretty hard for me, even if there is new enticing story DLC. This is why I'd often tend to hold off and play games a little later, because waiting for the release of, a complete edition or perhaps a Game of the Year edition is pretty disheartening when DLC feels like it was meant to be part of the main game, making the main story of the base game seem too short. However, Assassin's Creed Origins stands out in this regard. The base game already offers an abundance of main story content, making the addition of more feel like it could have been overwhelming. As such, the Hidden Ones feels like a massive breath of fresh air for the game. When it comes to the main story of the Hidden Ones DLC, it's a relatively short one. To be honest, it all depends on your progression and the pace of which you take it at. However, do note that this 3 or 4 hour length of main story is one that should not be taken to mislead you. So to talk about the story of the Hidden Ones DLC, I first have to go back just a little bit and touch upon the base game story. We know that Bayek is already a man of the people. In fact, that's quite literally his title, a Magi, and throughout Origins he follows the love of his life Aya in a pretty hopeless manner, and the theme of the story is a quest of vengeance. The game's ending, where Aya chooses a life in the shadows over their relationship, metaphorically feels like a dagger to the heart to both Bayek and us, the player. Bayek's story may have felt a little empty in the end, but the Hidden Ones DLC has a story that truly opens up the meaning of the Brotherhood, and one of the first tenets of the creed is formed from this DLC. I'll talk more about that particular part later in this video, but let's actually dive into the story. So, in the Hidden Ones, a woman named Tahira, who we actually know from the base game, calls Bayek to the Sinai to assist in a rebellion against the Romans. 2 Hidden Ones were killed, and Tahira, feeling responsible for training them, seeks Bayek's help. To maintain unity among the Hidden Ones, Tahira pretty much allied with a man named Gamilat, who is the rebel leader. Now she turns to Bayek for assistance in planning their next move. This right here marks the start of the Hidden Ones DLC, which takes place 4 years after the events of Origins. Now Bayek, to me, in the Hidden Ones DLC kind of exudes a more mentor-like aura. He has new robes and displays a lot more confidence in his abilities as he takes on yet another mission. Stories about his triumph over the Order of Ancients are even sung by people. Take this part for example. His response to the guys singing just gives him more of a likable persona.
Bayek, Bayek, Bayek. Bayek.
Sounds like quite a man.
The main villain in this DLC is General Rufio, who is a Roman soldier that's aiming to challenge Cleopatra's rule. Rufio is also part of the Order of Ancients, that group that eventually becomes the Templars. He has seized control of the Sinai region, using traitors and sympathizers within the local population to eliminate the Hidden Ones and even the rebels that they're cooperating with. So the general consensus is we need to bring down Rufio, and in order to do this, we must progress by eliminating his 3 lieutenants. We join forces with the local order branch in Sinai to free the area from the Roman threat. It's not a big group, just 3 lieutenants and their leader, that put pressure on the people of Sinai. The story of the Hidden Ones DLC is pretty brief, but it's tightly woven, and I'd like to think that it maintains a steady momentum for an enjoyable experience from start to finish. It's also very fast paced, which was unlike the main story in the base game, but to be honest that's to be expected since it is only 3 or 4 hours long. Anyway, after Bayek eliminates the 3 targets, he returns to the bureau only to face an ambush, resulting in the bureau in flames and Bayek being captured. He wakes up tied to a wooden cross, and after drawing the attention from Roman guards, Amunet, who we all know as Aya, rescues him. Now I particularly enjoy this scene because Aya here feels like a completely different character. You see, in the base game, Aya was more self-focused and she only aligned herself to Cleopatra and her ideals. She did not see the bigger picture until the end of Origins where she formed the Hidden Ones, whereas in the DLC, she works better as an ally to Bayek rather than a love interest for Bayek. Now despite the shift, it's a pretty nice touch that Bayek still harbors some attachment towards her due to genuine love, adding another dimension to an already amazing character. Anyway, remember how I said the bureau was set on fire and Bayek was captured? Well, unfortunately, Kashta and Tahira were also kidnapped where they were taken to a fort named Fort Klostra. After Amunet rescued Bayek, they both set out to go save Tahira and Kashta. Sadly, Tahira was killed where she was sustained during her capture. Devastated by her death, Kashta sought revenge against Rufio. However, Amunet advised him to bury Tahira and let her and Bayek handle Rufio. This is where we finally get to take down the big bad guy, aka General Rufio. Amunet learns of his location and she and Bayek travel to Arsinoe. Arsinoe? I can't pronounce that, I'll be honest. Anyway, they travel there to take him out. He's cooped up on an octarine, which I had to Google what on earth that meant. I thought that it was a made up word, but no, it's actually a thing. It's pretty much an ancient seafaring vessel and a type of galley that was used by the ancient civilizations of the Mediterranean, especially the ancient Greeks and Romans. That's a little free history lesson for you right there. Anyway, the game gives us the option to take out Rufio either stealthily or straight up frontal assault, and once you take him out, you get the iconic memory corridor, which I straight up love in this game. And Rufio's memory corridor is one that stands out quite a lot, perhaps even more than the ones in the base game. Throughout the Hidden Ones DLC's story, Bayek confronts moral dilemmas in his journey. Despite his unwavering commitment to the belief that the Hidden Ones serve the people and the greater good, he questions whether the unintended costs of the ongoing fight are justifiable. Amunet and Rufio both stand at opposite sides of the spectrum. You see, both believe that the goal is worth the cost, even if their versions of that goal differ. I remember in one scene, Bayek asks, "Have we done good?" only for Amunet to easily respond with yes. This highlights his conflict with their creed and the sacrifices made to achieve it. Of course, it's not as impressive as his character development in the base game, but it still provides food for thought. Anyway, once we've actually killed General Rufio, the story of the Hidden Ones DLC ends. Or does it? Because plot twist, there's a traitor in our midst, and that man is none other than Gamila. You know, that guy that was the leader of the rebels and fought against the Roman oppressors in Sinai, as well as an ally of the now deceased Tahira. Well, it turns out that he's a traitor, and he used some dirty tactics that resulted in the lives of innocents. Bayek then faces off against Gamila, and it's a pretty intense battle that takes place. This serves as the actual final boss encounter in the DLC, and it's pretty well structured. It gave me kind of a challenging experience, especially considering that I was playing on the hardest difficulty. I was even surprised that they threw in a Star Wars Easter egg. You know, the one that Obi-Wan Kenobi says to Anakin where he has the high ground.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
So, in the end, Bayek managed to kill Gamila, persuading him that his tactics had put innocents' lives at risk. Gamila repented, acknowledging his errors, and as he was dying, he expressed his hope that Bayek's organization would endure for eternity. You see, at the start, Gamila came across as a liberal, gentle, and idealistic person. However, his perspective later shifted, asserting that only the oppressed should emerge victorious. He exhibited traits of arrogance, extremism, and even vengeance towards those that were not aligned with his beliefs. And then of course, once Bayek takes him out, he's softened, returning to a more grounded and moral standpoint, which seems pretty typical for people on their last breath. And alas, the actual narrative of the Hidden Ones DLC comes to a close. I will say Abu Bakr Salim, who is the voice actor for Bayek, delivers once again an outstanding performance, not just in the DLC but in the whole game entirely. This further solidifies why I'd like to think that Bayek stands out as the best assassin in the series since Edward Kenway. Remember earlier in the video how I mentioned that the first tenet of the creed is formed in this DLC? Well, that tenet is to stay your blade from the flesh of the innocent, which is of course what Gamelat failed to do with how oppressive and negligent he was towards innocent people. The story of the Hidden Ones DLC is a pretty short one. It's not a 10+ hour DLC, but in the short amount of hours it gives you, it definitely gets the point across very effectively, especially in the story. There was never a moment where I found the Hidden Ones DLC quite boring or felt fatigued. The characters in the story, especially Amunet, were portrayed much better. So yeah, overall the story of the Hidden Ones DLC was well executed, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. The emphasis on quality over quantity truly made it something special, and this is exactly how I expect stories of DLC to be. Now that I talked about the main story for the Hidden Ones DLC, I want to go over where the DLC actually takes place, and that is Sinai, a real life peninsula of the Red Sea. It distinguishes itself from the broader Egypt in Assassin's Creed Origins with its very mountainous and craggy terrain. You see, from a design perspective, the landscapes are stunning and they contribute to portraying such an expansive image of ancient Egypt. The land is scattered with half-finished, demolished pyramids and even temples, offering a glimpse of both active and abandoned quarries. As you travel the area, you may come across quarry workers transporting stones. Sinai is centered around the major city, Arsenu, that city I will never be able to pronounce. This city serves as a focal point for Rome's control over the Egyptian peninsula, where locals along with collaborators are compelled to dismantle ancient relics and monuments. I noticed that there's a lot of obelisks and statues scattered around the city in disrepair, and the temples are surrounded by scaffolding as walls are taken down. Even in a city corner, slaves move up and down the pyramid of Amen-Mes, now carrying away stones, exposing a pharaoh's tomb for Roman invaders to plunder. Further along the coast, the walls of the ruler stands as a massive fortress, coordinating Rome's dominance over the local population. Much of Sinai is very mountainous, with you spending a considerable amount of time climbing rock walls and exploring hidden valleys. The southern tip is pretty much a desert, allowing you to sail the Red Sea along the peninsula. Throughout my experience playing in Sinai, I noticed how much more dense everything was. It's a lot more construction and rocky rather than the usual grainy sands of ancient Egypt in the base game. It's definitely a change of pace and a change of scenery, and I'm all for it. There are, I believe, 4 new sync points, and while actually synchronizing these viewpoints is no longer necessary to reveal the world map as it was in the main game, it still remains a pretty fun activity. Just reaching the summit of a high point, taking in the panoramic view, and listening to the soothing music remains as enjoyable as it has been since Assassin's Creed in 2007. The rewarding nature of exploration is a positive aspect of this DLC, because the new Sinai region is comparable in size to the largest regions in the main game. Oh yeah, and accessing this new region at first meant that you had to travel by boat. However, after completing the DLC, you can just return to the main map of Assassin's Creed Origins. In terms of content in Sinai, you can encounter some counterparts to the Phylakes, which are named Shadow of the Scarab in this DLC. You can find 2 new stone circles, and you'll also come across the usual mix of hidden treasures, papyrus puzzles, and Roman or bandit forts to clear. Some side quests make an effort to engage players differently, with the whole Gertha questline being quite a standout part for me. What sets it apart is the increased challenge in larger forts, featuring numerous soldiers and less stealth-friendly options. Verticality affects line of sight, and the less symmetrical design makes staying undetected quite a lot more challenging. It forced me to pretty much think more, and I'm not very smart. Not surprisingly, Ubisoft suggested that you should wait until you've reached level 38 in the main story before attempting to take on the DLC, and I'm pretty inclined to agree. Some parts of this DLC can be quite challenging. Thankfully, the Hidden Ones offers quite a different variation of side quests that match the quality found in the main game. For example, one side quest involves unraveling the mystery of a haunted crypt, where a man requests Bayek to lay his deceased wife to rest. Another engaging side quest requires solving a puzzle with mirrors and light. Completing it rewards you with, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the strongest pair of swords available in the game. Yet another entertaining side quest involves hunting for scrolls and treasures across the map, raiding enemy camps, underwater quarries, and even animal lairs. This allows you to appreciate the sights and the sounds of the new Sinai region. The Hidden Ones DLC introduces a new outfit, 4 legendary weapons, new mounts, and a couple of weapons to unlock as you progress through the story. In terms of the narrative, there's only 8 main story quests in the DLC, which take approximately 2 hours to complete. Overall, my total time spent on the Hidden Ones is around 7 or 8ish hours, which I think that's a fair amount. The Hidden Ones DLC stands as a pretty commendable expansion for Assassin's Creed Origins, and notably, it does not feel inferior to the base game's content, which is a contrast to many other DLCs today. Honestly, it's just a fantastic DLC in general, though some of the few first missions can be a bit frustrating, creating an immediate off-putting impression. Locating the Hidden Ones Bureau, for example, took me much longer than expected, but that's probably because of my idiot brain. Oh, and I did stumble upon one of the generals after an alarm was raised, rather than locating it myself, which kind of ruined my, immersion. But other than that, it's great. For a short DLC, there's quite a lot of content to do, and Sinai as a region is pretty fun to explore. So yeah, if you did enjoy this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and with that said, I'll see you in the next one.